These are the most interesting historical photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. This experimental Horten flying wing was tested in Göttingen in June 1944. Its wood skin and smooth shape cut radar echo and foreshadowed modern stealth planes. Muslim women in Yugoslavia march with banners for Tito and Stalin in 1944. This rare street scene shows early female political action during a fast shift toward a new state. Harry Houdini steps from a locked cell in Washington in 1906. He outwitted guards by hiding tools and using trained control to slip bonds, a stunt that fed his legend. A resident of besieged Leningrad holds the daily bread ration in 1941. Only 125 grams kept many alive through the long winter. Russian and United States peacekeepers share a meal in Bosnia in 1996. They worked on a joint mission to carry out the Dayton peace deal, sometimes patrolling the same roads. Empress Wanrong, consort of the last Emperor Puyi, lies with a pipe in the 1930s. Records say she used about 2 ounces a day and later disappeared in custody, a quiet end to a fallen court. Guards stand over the Mona Lisa in Florence after its recovery in 1913. Vincenzo Peruggia took it from the Louvre in 1911 and hid it for 2 years in a trunk. A Canadian soldier tends a lily near the front line in July 1917. He rescued it from no man's land and kept life growing amid rubble, a quiet sign of hope. Crowds pack Clark Street in Chicago to glimpse Al Capone during his court case in October 1931. Thousands jam the block, turning the trial into a public spectacle. An early X-ray shows a corset squeezing the rib cage, part of Dr. Ludovic O. Followell's 1908 study called Le Corset. He used the new rays to argue for safer, looser designs, rather than a ban. Workers pull a steel frame while building the first concrete shelter around the damaged Unit 4 at Chernobyl in 1986. Teams rotated in short shifts to limit exposure, and more than 600,000 people took part in the cleanup. French trench cleaners pose on the Western Front in 1917 or 1918, wearing heavy sheepskin and face covers. These small teams followed an assault to search dugouts and tight passages, using quick moves and close-range gear to force a surrender. Londoners form a huge line for buses after a rail accident at Farringdon on 31 May 1955. The line curves around a wartime ruin, showing a city still healing, while traffic and double-deck buses move past. Publisher Hugh Hefner holds a big dolphin fish on a boat off Miami in 1970. By then, he had turned a magazine launched in 1953 into a global media brand known for long interviews and pop culture flair. Tom Savini stands on set with a cup in hand as a towering creature suit leans behind him. 1996. A master of makeup and effects, he shaped the film's creatures and also appeared on screen. A rare double role. Flag bearers take the athlete oath at the first Winter Olympic Games in Chamonix on 25 January 1924. The event began as a winter sports week and later gained full Olympic status, starting a tradition kept at every Winter Games. More than 100 members of the Mothers' Union gather for a service inside the war-damaged Coventry Cathedral in 1947. The roofless nave, left from destruction in 1940, became a quiet symbol of peace and renewal as the city planned a new cathedral beside it. Engines and hoses sit encased in thick ice after a 5-alarm blaze in Boston around 1920. Spray froze on contact in bitter wind, turning the waterfront into a glass field that crews still had to cross. Armed state troops pose at Paint Creek Junction, West Virginia, in 1913 during the Paint Creek and Cabin Creek strike. The long coal dispute became part of the West Virginia mine wars, with martial law, tent colonies, and tense clashes between miners and guards. German troops stand at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Paris on 28 June 1940. The image shows an occupying force pausing at a memorial to sacrifice. Jewish prisoners of the Warsaw camp gather moments after fighters from the Home Army Unit Zoska opened the gates on 5 August 1944. During the Warsaw Uprising, These men freed hundreds in a swift raid that shocked the occupiers. A young North Vietnam militiawoman leads a downed United States pilot through the jungle. This image was used on postage stamps in 1967 to mark the claimed 2,000th enemy aircraft brought down over the North. A mid-century case reshaped ideas about early childhood in 1956 when a 7-year-old was found without spoken language. Care teams used patient teaching to spark first words and steady growth. Captain Edward Camden, a veteran of the American Civil War, stands in his old gray coat with a sword. When the United States entered World War I, he was 81 and tried to join again, a rare show of duty that turned heads. A British commando tucks a Fairbairn Sykes dagger into his sock as the ship leaves for Normandy on June 6, 1944. The slim blade and ankle carry were standard gear for stealth movement during the night landings. Zuma arrived on the ship Clotilda in 1860, one of the last known Africans brought to the United States. Photographed in 1912 with American-born grandchildren, she kept names and places that later helped historians confirm the wreck. Marilyn Monroe visits United States forces in Korea in 1954, wearing field clothes between songs. She gave 10 shows in 4 days for more than 100,000 service members, turning a cold hillside into a bright stage. Actress Marilyn Hare set a bold goal in 1942 to kiss 10,000 United States soldiers to lift morale. On her first day, she reached 733, turning a base visit into a headline drive. Captain McMahon of the United States 9th Army carries a small German girl across a broken bridge in Tangermünde on May 1, 1945. The crossing came hours before local surrender, turning a combat route into a rescue path. Around 1900, prisoners in Rangoon prison walked huge treadwheels for hours, turning the machinery of the jail. The moving steps powered mills and pumps, a human energy system once common in colonial prisons before electric motors replaced it. German prisoners of war march across a cleared field in Denmark in 1945 to prove the work was done. More than 1 million mines were lifted from the Danish coast after the war, and many teams were made to walk the ground as the final test. Vinkas Juška was a Lithuanian book carrier in the late 1900s, part of the Knygnešiai, who moved Lithuanian language books across the border during a press ban. Their quiet trips kept reading and spelling alive until the ban ended in 1904. A Saigon nobleman in 1869 displays very long fingernails, a clear sign that he did not do manual work. In 19th century Vietnam and China, such nails marked high status and careful living, turning a hand into a quiet badge of rank. In Victorian Britain around 1890, shopkeepers covered storefronts with meat, game birds, and rabbits to show abundance and draw crowds. Before modern refrigeration, winter air and fast turnover kept goods safe, and holiday weeks turned displays into vast patterned walls. Fidel Castro appears at the United Nations in 1960, still in field uniform after the Cuban Revolution. He delivered a marathon speech of more than 4 hours, one of the longest in the Assembly's history. Apollo 15 astronauts left a small metal figure and a plaque on the Moon in 1971 in memory of 14 space explorers from the United States and the Soviet Union. It stands as the first art monument on the Moon. French painter Jean-Julien Lemordant sits with bandaged head and dark glasses in 1917 after losing his sight while serving in 1915. Years later, several surgeries restored vision, and by 1935 he could see again and returned to art. Ernest Hemingway smiles from a military hospital bed in Italy in August 1918, recovering after a night run as a Red Cross ambulance driver when exploding shells knocked him down. He later shaped this experience into the core of A Farewell to Arms. 2 gauchos square off in a formal honor duel, while companions sip Mayday, Argentina, 1930. These contests followed strict ranch codes with witnesses and the facon, and the practice faded as rural law spread. British troops sleep on kit bags at the quay in Boulogne during the Great War after landing to support French and Belgian allies. Boulogne became a main supply port for the British Expeditionary Force, moving men and goods by the millions from 1914 to 1918. New arrivals at Ellis Island share their first Christmas dinner in New York in 1920. The center processed more than 8 million people that decade, and holiday meals were served by volunteers to welcome them. British writer and mystic Aleister Crowley poses in January 1921, his hood marked with an eye inside a triangle. He shaped a new belief called Thelema and became a lasting shock name in modern ritual magic and pop culture. United States troops of the North Russia expedition, the Polar Bear Boys, cheer before sailing home in 1919. Their brief mission backed Allied aims during Russia's civil conflict, then ended as the force withdrew to the United States. Mehmet Ali Agca bows and kisses Pope John Paul II's hand during a prison visit in 1983. 2 years after the St. Peter's Square attack, the Pope met him in person and offered calm words of forgiveness. A giant sturgeon from the Vistula is shown in Warsaw's Murawski market halls in September 1927. These long-lived fish once swam upriver in spring and were prized for meat and caviar, but they disappeared from the basin within a few decades. Alberto Santos Dumont lifts his 14 bis at Paris on 23 October 1906, the first public-powered flight in Europe. It rose without rails or outside help and set the first officially observed distance and height marks, thrilling a park crowd. On June 4, 1937, a rolling wall of dust swept toward Hooker, Oklahoma, turning day into near night in minutes. The Dust Bowl pushed leaders to create soil care programs and windbreak planting that changed how the Great Plains farmed. American writer John Steinbeck visited the Kyiv city center in 1947 with photographer Robert Capa to document life after the war. Many streets still showed heavy damage, and his calm report later appeared in the book A Russian Journal. In 1897, S.A. Andrei, Niels Strindberg, and Knut Frenkel tried to reach the North Pole by hydrogen balloon, then trekked across broken ice after the balloon came down. Their journals and film were found in 1930, revealing the last days of the journey. State grain teams take sacks from villagers in Ukraine in 1932 during a severe famine. Quotas and travel limits deepened the crisis, later remembered as the Holodomor in studies and memorials. Clodomiro Picado, a Nicaraguan Costa Rican scientist, collects venom in Costa Rica in the 1920s for new anti-venom research. Records say he treated patients with mold extracts like penicillin at least a year before its famous report, and a research institute now bears his name. This is the Les Tourneaux Overland Train, a roadless cargo convoy built for the United States Army in the 1950s. Hundreds of meters long, it used gas turbines to power dozens of electric wheel motors, so supplies could cross Arctic ground without tracks or roads. A Japanese soldier walks across the flat remains of Hiroshima in September 1945. The blast 1 month earlier leveled most buildings within 2 kilometers, leaving a silent plain where streets once crossed. Blindfolded German sailors from the battleship Scharnhorst step ashore after the Battle of the North Cape, December 1943. Only 36 of 1,968 survived, rescued by HMS Scorpion and HMS Matchless. Princess Elizabeth trains on a 250 cubic centimeter British motorcycle in February 1945 during her service with the Auxiliary Territorial Service. She learned driving and maintenance, the only future monarch to qualify as a military vehicle mechanic and driver. In 1874, the Imperial Russian Navy launched the round ironclad Novgorod, built to pack heavy armor onto a very short hull. Its strange shape made the ship twist under power and recoil, so crews struggled to keep aim, and the bold idea became a sea legend. Teenage recruits in Germany line up in uniform in 1945, many drawn from the Hitler Youth and the Volkssturm during the last weeks. Some were as young as 12 and were given simple anti-tank weapons to defend streets and bridges. Roald Amundsen feeds a young polar bear named Marie during his Arctic journey around June 1920. The explorer who reached the South Pole in 1911 kept the cub at camp for a time, a rare look at quiet life in the high north. In 1973, Marlon Brando declined his Academy Award for The Godfather and sent Sachin Littlefeather to speak. She gave a short message on film portrayals and the event at Wounded Knee, creating one of the ceremony's most famous moments. This rare photo shows the United States Supreme Court in session in 1937, when cameras were banned. A young visitor hid a small camera in her handbag with a tiny hole for the lens, creating one of only 2 images from inside. German and Vichy forces carry out the Marseille Roundup on 24 January 1943, moving families from the old port into rail cars. It became the largest raid in the south of France, clearing whole blocks and sending thousands east under guard. At age 56, General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. landed with the first wave at Utah Beach on June 6, 1944, walking with a cane and guiding units under fire, the only general to wade ashore like his men. He died of a heart attack a few weeks later and was awarded the Medal of Honor for his leadership, not a Ferdinand. This is the Porsche Tiger prototype VK 45.01P, tested in 1942. It lost the trials to the Henschel design that became the Tiger I, and about 90 of its chassis were later turned into the Ferdinand Elephant tank destroyers. Inside a hollow oak near Kutaisi sits the Chapel of Archangel Michael, a one-person space used by a priest for quiet prayer. Visitors gather outside for blessings at the doorway, turning the tiny trunk chapel into an open-air service. Men in Nubia pull a Nile crocodile from the river in 1870, captured by one of the era's early travel photographers. The species can grow beyond 5 meters and was taken then for hide and to protect riverside villages. On February 18, 1964, the Beatles met Cassius Clay at his Miami gym, where he lined them up like dominoes for the cameras. 5 days later, he won the world title and soon took the name Muhammad Ali, while the band sat at #1 in America. 2 pop culture quakes in 1 week. A Soviet KV-1 lies disabled near the prison in Venev in November 1941. The turret shows over 20 impact marks, and even the gun barrel is pierced. German tanker Hermann Bix reportedly stopped it by shooting through the barrel with a 37mm cannon. At the 1956 Winter Games in Cortina d'Ampezzo, the staff updated the outdoor rink's surface with a fill barrel, a sled that dragged a tank of water behind it to apply a thin vitreous coating. Before Zamboni became the standard, many European ice rinks used this warm water treatment method. Autumn 1920. Vladimir Lenin sits with relatives inside the Kremlin, one of the rare informal family photos of him, with a cat cradled in the back row. Because photographers mostly documented state events after 1917 and private access was tightly controlled, 2 world leaders share a quiet toast at a warm private dinner while guests smile in the background. The calm moment hints at behind-the-scenes diplomacy, where soft talks can shape big moves. A lone civilian stands before a wartime court in 1944, surrounded by rows of uniformed officers. She was tried after a failed plot against the German leader, a tense moment where quiet words could decide fate. Soldiers carry a flag-draped casket through the station in Luxembourg City in 1945. It holds General George S. Patton, Jr., who asked to rest with his soldiers at the Luxembourg American Cemetery instead of West Point. A senior British minister watches a tense street standoff in London on 3 January 1911. It is the rare siege of Sydney Street, where a cabinet official stood beside police and fire crews as the incident unfolded. Gregory Peck stands as Captain Ahab during filming of Moby Dick in 1956, balanced over a towering whale prop. The set used giant mechanical whales and powerful water effects to make the sea chase feel real. British airmen study a captured Messerschmitt 109 Emile, its nose open to reveal the engine after a forced landing in 1940. The inverted V-12 with fuel injection kept power in negative G dives, a small edge that surprised early opponents. Franklin Delano Roosevelt visits Mount Rushmore during construction to see the new Thomas Jefferson carving in 1936. Only Washington and Jefferson were visible then, while crews were still shaping the granite with drills and blasts. 2 Italian airships glide above Libya around 1911 during one of the first aerial missions in history. The event is widely noted as the first use of aircraft to drop munitions in a conflict, a shift that changed tactics for decades. An athlete leaps in a village contest during a German expedition in East Africa around 1908 with a claimed height of 2.5 meters. The scissor style seen here came long before the modern flop used in today's high jump. Hans Geiger and Ernest Rutherford sit in a Manchester lab around 1912, testing devices that counted tiny particle hits. Their work led to the Geiger counter and the picture of the atom with a small center, a quiet step that reshaped science. Villagers show a giant beluga sturgeon caught in the village of Kosheli in 1937. Such czar fish were prized for caviar and sometimes sent as gifts to leaders, a sign of river wealth. A German signal crew gives an officer a field telephone around 1914 to 1916. They laid twin wire along the ground and through trees, making clear calls up to 20 kilometers. A woman in a tuxedo performs a staged parody in 1937, mimicking a popular American singer's show style. This private costume moment reflects the era's entertainment trends and studio playfulness. Thick smoke rises over Toulon as the French fleet is sunk in 1942. Crews scuttled 77 ships to stop German forces from taking them, one of the largest planned sinkings in naval history. Crowds line up for an exhibition of the downed American reconnaissance plane in Moscow in 1960. The U-2 incident jolted world politics and froze a planned summit, showing how one flight could change big talks. Sailors load a torpedo into a German submarine during the First World War. Crews usually reloaded in port, using hand power and small cranes to guide each heavy round. Rows of concrete dragon's teeth stretch across the Siegfried Line in 1945, built to stop tanks. Allied jeeps roll past the barrier, proof that terrain and time can turn a wall into a road. Princess Diana listens through headsets in the air traffic control tower at Gatwick Airport on 22 September 1988. For a moment, she enters the world of controllers and hears the calm voices that guide planes home. Crowds gather around a new British Airways biplane on its first flight on 6 June 1936. A ticket cost £4, 5 shillings, about £165 today. A glimpse of early air travel luxury. Masked trainees read quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong during a camp in 1970. The Little Red Book became one of the most printed books of the 20th century and shaped tactics and morale far beyond China. An Imperial Japanese D-4Y3 dives toward the carrier Essex on 25 November 1944. The impact set the deck ablaze and caused heavy casualties, a stark moment from the late Pacific War. Farmers pour out milk on a country road in Wisconsin in 1933 to protest a price crash during the Great Depression. The dramatic spill was part of milk strikes that helped push rules for fairer minimum prices. In October 1916, injured soldiers at a field hospital present a trench dog to a nurse. Such animals often served as mascots and message runners that lifted spirits on the Western Front. On a muddy outdoor court in Berlin in 1936, the first Olympic basketball final was played in heavy rain. The United States of America defeated Canada by 19-8, proving the young sport could thrive in any weather. Winston Churchill rides with Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery past columns of vehicles near the Rhine on 26 March 1945. Days after the crossing, they toured the road to lift morale and check the advance into Western Germany. Elvis Presley faces reporters in Las Vegas on 1 August 1969, the day after his first live show in years. His return at the new International Hotel launched a record run of sold-out concerts and reshaped his career. A giant airship glides over Gran Via in Madrid in 1930, turning the avenue into a balcony to the sky. It was the Graf Zeppelin on a European tour, proof that long-distance air travel once drifted quietly above the city. Max Steinecke smiles in Saudi Arabia in 1938, the year his stubborn push at Dammam No. 7 finally struck oil. That single well opened the kingdom's oil era and reshaped the world's energy map. Neil Armstrong thanks troops of the 1st Infantry Division at Lai Khe, 30 miles north of Saigon, on 22 December 1969. Months after walking on the moon, he toured Southeast Asia to honor service members and inspire hope. Jenny Camillo, age 8, carries a cranberry box in Pemberton, New Jersey, on 27 September 1910. Photographer Louis Wickes Hine used images like this to push laws that limited child labor in the United States. This rare portrait of Frédéric Chopin was taken in 1849, one of only 2 known photographs of him. The pianist and composer reshaped piano music with poetic harmonies and dances that still ring in halls today. Paul Anderson performs a backlift of 2,844 kilograms in 1957. The short-range lift on a low rack showcased raw leg and back power that stunned sports experts. An aerial view shows a London neighborhood torn open by a single V-2 rocket in January 1945. The supersonic blast left a deep crater and rows of shattered homes before anyone heard it coming. By late January 1943, German units in Stalingrad were split into 2 pockets north and south of Mamayev Kurgan. Air supply fell far short, and the 6th Army weakened each day from cold and hunger as the ring closed. Inside the House of Worth in 1910, clients study feathered hats and gowns in a bright Paris salon. Founded by Charles Frederick Worth, this house helped invent modern haute couture with live models and sewn-in labels on each design. This modest house in Gori, Georgia, is the birthplace of Joseph Stalin. Born to a cobbler's family in 1878, he later listed his birth year as 1879 in official papers. American soldiers kneel for mass on broken stone inside Cologne Cathedral in March 1945. The Gothic giant survived thousands of air raids with its twin spires still standing. A calm service in a shattered nave. A long convoy of 6x6 cargo trucks rolls through Italy in 1943. These General Motors Deuce and a Half workhorses formed the backbone of Allied supply, with over 560,000 built and feats like the Red Ball Express. Pelé lets the ball run past to wrong-foot Uruguay's keeper in Mexico in 1970, a bold no-touch feint that many strikers later copied. Brazil won 3-1 on the way to a 3rd world title and kept the Jules Rimet Cup forever. Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie joins Crown Prince Akihito for a traditional duck hunt in 1956. The quiet outing shows rare cross-cultural diplomacy long before Akihito became emperor. A storefront is emptied during city unrest in Los Angeles in 1992. The 6-day turmoil followed a court verdict that sparked nationwide debate and led to major policy changes. Loved ones reach up for one more hug through the carriage windows before the train pulls out. In wartime, a goodbye could feel final, and every face tries to remember every detail. A Japanese sentry stands on the Great Wall in 1937 during the Second Sino-Japanese War. The ancient Ming fortification briefly became a front line, where stone from past centuries met modern equipment. Chinese Americans dressed as Lady Liberty and Uncle Sam ride in a New York parade for the 4th Liberty Loan in 1918. Their costumes show how immigrant communities rallied to fund the First World War effort with public bond drives. A long line of ambulances stands ready in Calcutta in 1916, donated by wealthy Indians and supporters across the British Empire. Civilian gifts turned into a life-saving convoy that carried the wounded to care. Al Jolson sings for troops in Korea in 1950, belting to a packed amphitheater from a makeshift stage. He rushed to the war zone and gave dozens of shows in days. then passed away soon after returning home. After a night of fires in 1920, the heart of Cork lies in ruins. The blaze happened during the Irish War of Independence, destroying shops, City Hall, and the public library. An American photographer steadies a large camera in a flooded trench during the First World War. His images carried home the daily reality of the line, a quiet record made knee-deep in mud. German paratroopers hold up the captured coat of Josip Broz Tito after the raid on Durvar in May 1944. The strike came close to catching the partisan leader, but he slipped away through mountain paths and hidden tunnels. In 1929, modern mechanics showed a self-defense vest that triggered a hidden mechanism when the wearer raised both hands. The odd invention by Samuel Schwartz never caught on, and now feels like a cautionary what-if. A tower stands under massive smoke clouds over Tokyo on 1 September 1923. A magnitude 7.9 quake sparked fires and a rare fire whirl that swept the city for days. 3 boys stand by barbed wire at Manzanar in 1944 with a watchtower in the distance. The image was made by Toyo Miyatake, a noted photographer who first built a hidden camera and later gained approval to document daily life inside. Matt, the French bulldog of the 11th Engineers, carried small packets to troops along the front in 1918. Mascot dogs like him boosted morale and slipped through mud where people could not. Stanislaus Zbyszko, born Jan Stanisław Cyganiewicz, hoists a rival overhead around 1905. He became an early global wrestling star and a world heavyweight champion who shaped strength culture for decades. Viscount Makoto Saito speaks in Hibiya Park, Tokyo, on 17 May 1933 to announce Japan is leaving the League of Nations. The break followed Japan's recognition of the new state of Manchukuo, a move that signaled a turn to go it alone. Jesse Owens steps off a train in London after winning 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics in 1936. His speed set records and his welcome showed how far his story traveled. Strike supporters sprint down Featherstone Street in Wellington as mounted police move in during the Great Strike in 1913. The turmoil over wages and union rights briefly shut ports and rail lines across New Zealand. Future President Gerald Ford crouches on the practice field for the University of Michigan in 1933. He starred on 2 national championship teams and later turned down offers from the National Football League to study law. German soldiers raise their hands as Red Army troops advance during Operation Bagration in 1944. This summer offensive smashed Army Group Center and opened the road to the east of Germany. May 1941. Ethiopian patriots stand with captured Italian equipment, waiting to hear that Emperor Haile Selassie has returned. This moment marks the end of a 5-year occupation and the rebirth of a kingdom. Berlin, May 2, 1945. German soldiers lay down gear at a subway entrance. Within days, Germany signed its final surrender, and the conflict in Europe ended. Late 1950s. A soldier sets up the Davy Crockett, a portable launcher for an ultralight nuclear device. Its energy was about 20 tons, tiny for its class, yet built to change how troops moved on the field. September 14, 1999. Officers checked traders' papers at a Moscow market during a citywide sweep. The action followed a week of fear and led to tighter checks across stations, markets, and roads. November 1989. People rush to the wall, hammer the concrete, and climb over as the border opens for the first time in decades. Families cross freely, and a barrier that split a city for 28 years turns into pieces of stone and a new beginning. 1933. Albert Einstein works at his desk in Princeton after leaving Germany, soon joining the new Institute for Advanced Study. Here, he shaped ideas on gravity, light, and time that still guide modern physics. 1948. In San Bernardino, 2 brothers launch a tiny stand serving 15-cent hamburgers with a 9-item menu. Their speedy service system became the blueprint for fast food worldwide and the start of McDonald's. 1959. Kharkiv. A buyer checks a new black-and-white television while radios line the shelves. In these years, television spread fast across the Soviet Union, often bought on installment plans that turned many homes into small theaters. February 1911 in Bayou La Batre, Alabama. Young Julia sits on the steps and looks after a smaller child while the grown-ups are at the factory. Scenes like this helped push new United States laws that protected children and changed work across the country. Chicago, 1928. Amelia Earhart stands in a leather flight coat, fresh from her transatlantic fame. 4 years later, she would cross the Atlantic alone, setting records that inspired new pilots around the world. London, 1940. A calm man sits by a sandbag shelter called Hotel Ritz and drinks tea while warnings may sound. During the Blitz, tea time stayed alive and helped lift spirits across the city. Russia, early 1900s. A woodcarver teaches his son to shape a bowl by hand. Skills like this made everyday spoons and bowls and passed from parent to child for generations. 1938, London. An indoor ski class trains on curved metal rails to learn rhythm, balance, and quick footwork. These early simulators let city athletes practice turns and jumps long before the first snowfall. 1941 to 1942. A German tank crew builds a scale model of the Soviet KV-1 to learn its shape for quick recognition. Paper models and silhouette drills helped crews spot friend or foe in seconds. Steel nets stretch across a harbor to stop enemy submarines during the war. Gates could open for friendly ships, while floats and chains kept the barrier sealed under the waves. 1944, New Guinea. A Douglas. A 20G trails smoke after being hit during a low run over the bay. The A-20, known as Havoc, was a fast attack plane whose strong frame helped many crews return home. 1917. Soldiers in front-line trenches hang lines to show the many rats they caught, a daily fight against spoiled food and sickness. Some grew as big as a cat, so units set traps each night and kept count to track progress. 1943. A motorcycle rider grins under a coat of mud, proof of Russia's Rasputitsa, the season when roads turned to glue. In spring and autumn, melted snow and rain trapped trucks and tanks, slowing whole armies to a crawl. 1937. A man tries one of the first vending machines that sold beer in cans. New canning technology made chilled, sealed drinks easy to sell and previewed modern grab-and-go culture. 1944. A B-17 Flying Fortress made it back to base with its nose ripped open after a raid on Cologne. This rugged plane could fly on 3 engines and often brought its crew home against the odds. Moscow's Gorky Park features a giant spinning barrel ride, reached by long stairs. Early park machines used simple motors and wood, yet gave city visitors a new taste of speed and fun. 1940, Michigan. Engineers test Thompson and Reed's experimental speedboat, a giant rotating drum that drives a floating platform. It promised fast travel with less drag and looked like a water wheel from a dream. 1945. A streetcar turns through the Park Row Loop at the Manhattan end of the Brooklyn Bridge. The bridge's center lanes held dedicated tracks that carried crowds until 1950, when service ended and the lanes went to autos. 1915. Frank Wild, deputy leader of Ernest Shackleton's expedition, stands by the shattered remains of the ship Endurance, crushed by Antarctic ice. The crew survived months on the floes and made an open boat journey that became a legend of courage and rescue. June 1943. A Soviet MBR-2 flying boat returns from a cold northern patrol, easing its wooden hull to the pier. Its single engine sat high in a pusher mount to keep spray away, a clever design for rough Arctic waters. London, 1930s. A milkman rolls his cart and plays a gramophone to gather a crowd. Street sellers used music as free advertising long before radio vans and catchy jingles. October 10, 1941. Soviet defenders at Hanko crowd a table to write their answer to a demand to give up. They kept the base for weeks more and left only in December after a long siege. 1962. Marilyn Monroe shows Patricia Kennedy, sister of John Kennedy, how to dance swing in a quiet living room. A light lesson reveals the star's charm and a rare glimpse into the family's private world. Two action film stars sit in a small set trailer, talking over coffee between takes. Their screen rivalry hid a quiet friendship that shaped fitness culture in the 1990s. Early 20th century armies used rolling field comfort houses, like this wooden wagon, set up near the front for officers to rest and clean up. These mobile rooms became a quiet symbol of morale on long campaigns, and their story still raises eyebrows. Moscow, 1931. Workers carry giant inflatable houses across Red Square in a public parade. The playful forms advertised bold housing plans of the first 5-year program and a dream of a fast-built future. Paper money recovered from Titanic lies in protective sleeves, its colors altered by decades under the sea. The ship went down in April 1912, and the cold depths helped preserve artifacts like this. Spring 1976. In his bedroom, Steve Jobs tested the Apple I on a small television and a wooden desk. Hand-built by Steve Wozniak and first sold as a bare board at the Byte Shop, this simple kit became the seed of a technology giant. 1908. An early Zeppelin leaves its shed, a rigid airship with many gas cells inside a light metal frame. Powered by engines and filled with hydrogen, these sky giants soon made long journeys and captured global imagination. 1962. Marilyn Monroe smiles during The Last Sitting for Vogue, photographed by Bert Stern over 3 nights. He made more than 2,000 images, capturing a playful yet thoughtful icon at the height of her fame. New York, early 20th century. A fire pumper stands coated in ice after crews fought flames in bitter cold. Spray from the hoses froze in seconds, turning ladders and streets into glass, and forcing teams to chip their tools free. 1963. Valentina Tereshkova rests beside her Vostok capsule as villagers and soldiers gather at the landing site. She became the first woman to orbit Earth, spending nearly 3 days in space and opening a new chapter in human flight. August 29, 1949. A test cloud rises over the steppe at Semipalatinsk, marking the first Soviet atomic device. It signaled a new era in science and the world power balance. 1939. Azerbaijani shepherds rest on the grass and spin a record beside their flock. Portable gramophones carried music to wide pastures long before radios and phones reached the hills. 1925. Moscow. Women assemble alarm clocks on a factory line, turning tiny gears into precise timekeepers. Workshops like this spread time discipline across a new society, waking rail workers and students at the same hour each day. Built in 1884, the Day Dion Bouton et Trépardou dos à dos steam runabout is the oldest car that still runs. It used coal and water to drive twin cylinders and even won an early road trial in France. Young Elizabeth Taylor smiles in a polka-dot robe with a kitten tucked into the pocket. By the early 1950s, she was already a rising star, known for violet eyes and scene-stealing roles. 1946. A Federal Bureau of Investigation special agent takes the 100 millionth fingerprint from film star Margaret O'Brien. The vast paper index powered identifications nationwide and hinted at future digital systems. Built in 1904, the Nikolaev Port Lighthouse was the first tall reinforced concrete structure, rising 40.2 meters. It showcased new building methods, but did not survive the Second World War. 1951. Christian Dior models pose by the porch of the Caryatids on the Acropolis, mixing high fashion with ancient stone. The scene boosted post-war Paris style and turned Athens into a global runway for a day. February 18, 1977. The test shuttle Enterprise rode on a modified Boeing 747 for its first flight in the air. These captive carry runs proved handling and led to free glides that showed the craft could land like a plane. Winter, 1918 in Siberia. Czech legionnaires stand in heavy fur coats while guarding a train on the Trans-Siberian Railway. This force controlled long stretches of the line and made a long journey east to Vladivostok to sail home after the Great War. 1958. North Korea leader Kim Il-sung rides through Hanoi in a ZIS-110 parade car with a motorcycle guard. The visit strengthened early ties between Pyongyang and Hanoi during years of rebuilding. 1945. Newly freed mothers in Dachau cradle their infants inside a crowded barrack. This scene shows life beginning again just days after the camp was opened by United States troops. 1960. California. Orchard workers stride on tall stilts to reach high branches and move fast between trees. These light metal legs gave one person ladder height with both hands free, turning balance into a useful tool. Norway, 1885. A man rides a high-wheel bicycle, known as a penny farthing, past timber houses and farm carts. These tall bikes were quick but tricky, and soon gave way to chain-driven safety bicycles. England, 1944. A chaplain offers a short blessing to the crew of the flying fortress named Fifinella. The name came from Roald Dahl's Gremlin, later drawn by Walt Disney for pilot's patches, a lucky charm for long flights. 10th century Sweden. A Viking pendant shaped like Thor's hammer from Adishög, with silver and gold detail. People wore Mjolnir for luck and protection, a sign of Old Norse faith during the shift to Christianity. 1963. Moscow. Fidel Castro visits the Bolshoi Theater and poses with ballerinas after a performance. The trip strengthened cultural ties between Cuba and the Soviet Union. 1943. Washington. Andrei Gromyko, the new Soviet ambassador, reads a Russian newspaper with his wife and children in their embassy home. He would later shape Cold War diplomacy for decades, nicknamed Mr. Niet. But here he is, just a calm father on a quiet night. Late 1970s. Visitors lean over the South Tower roof deck with the Empire State Building on the horizon and the Hudson curving north. At 1,362 feet, this open-air perch gave one of the highest city views on Earth. Soviet factory workers assemble vinyl dolls on a moving belt, fitting hair, clothes, and eyes by hand. Plants like this made millions each year, filling New Year gift boxes across the Soviet Union. 1974. Kyoto. United States President Gerald Ford takes part in a traditional party game with a geisha, turning a formal visit into laughter. This playful moment became one of the most remembered images from his trip. June 27, 1944. Allied troops reach a German underground fort near Cherbourg, cut deep into rock to hide guns and stores. These tunnels slowed the port's capture, but within days, the harbor reopened and began feeding the push into France. Moscow region, 1963. A tanker sells kerosene by the liter, poured with a metal dipper into sturdy cans. Many homes cooked on small kerosene stoves, so this route was a lifeline for daily meals. 1914. General Francisco Pancho Villa rides with the Division of the North, a fast cavalry force that shifted the fight for Mexico. That same year, he signed a deal with a film company, turning his campaigns into early news cinema and a legend on screen. Late 1990s. Russia's first president Boris Yeltsin entertains France's president Jacques Chirac with a dramatic aiming gesture and a wild story. The playful moment shows how his unscripted style often stole the spotlight during high-level visits. 1860. Pittsburgh's factories blanket the city with coal smoke, so thick that street lamps sometimes burned at noon. The boom in iron, glass, and soon steel made it a powerhouse and earned the nickname Smoky City. Winter 1937. During the Great Ohio River flood, a man rows a homemade raft built from 4 metal tubs and wooden slats. The waters covered towns from Pittsburgh to Cairo and drove more than 1 million people from their homes, leading to stronger levees and better warning systems. Late 1940s in the Netherlands. A family clambers over a German Panther tank left from the fighting. For years, these steel hulks dotted fields as playgrounds and scrap, reminders of the battles that swept through in 1944. August 1945. Crewmen aboard the battleship United States ship Missouri burst into song after hearing that Japan would surrender. Weeks later, the formal signing happened on this very deck, closing World War II. April 1865. A crowd gathers at the Vicksburg courthouse to hear news of President Abraham Lincoln's death. The Mississippi City had fallen in 1863, and now its people mourned the man who kept the Union together. 1965. Pelé stands with Soviet players in Moscow after a friendly between Brazil and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. His visit drew big crowds and showed how football could bridge distant countries. January 1911, Pittston, Pennsylvania. Breaker boys crowd the UN breaker, picking rock from coal while dust hangs in the air. Photos like this pushed new child labor laws and changed safety in American mines. 1966. A tiny pocket television with a screen under 2 inches uses a miniature cathode ray tube. It hinted at watching shows anywhere, long before mobile video became normal. Peggy Fleming holds up her gold from the 1968 Winter Games in Grenoble. Her figure skating win was the only gold for the United States that year and helped start a new, modern style on the ice. London Underground workers sort mountains of ticket stubs to map where crowds travel. These paper piles revealed rush hours and guided new trains and stations.